All right, guys, chapter 4, social theories of delinquency. So you'll remember chapter 3 I talked about was a lot about the individual causes of delinquency, where we weren't really considering society or things that were being done in the community around people, but it was the individual subject's responsibility and ultimately fault that they were committing criminal acts. So this chapter talks a lot more about social theories and theories about people committing crime because of parts of society, let's say that. So anyways, let's jump into this social structure. Obviously, we are going through some crazy times in the United States. I want to say it's just a crazy time. Social structure. So what does that mean? Your book describes it as the relatively stable formal and informal arrangements that characterize society, including its economic arrangements, social institutions, values, and norms. Okay, so the causes of delinquency according to social structure include the social and cultural environment in which an adolescent grows up, or subcultures that they're involved in. So, does society have structure? And should it? If it does, do things work better? Are they worse? I don't know. I don't know the answers to all these questions. But ultimately, social structure is part of our every moment of every day of our lives. And if that social structure is disorganized or doesn't work well, we come up with some issues that could potentially cause delinquent behavior or lead to delinquent behavior. If you think about, this last few months here with the whole COVID-19, our social structure has really, everything kind of fell apart. Our schools are closed down. Our economy has taken a huge hit. There's fear, there's hate, there's anger, there's frustration. Right now, our society in general is in kind of this whole disorganized disorganized place. Does that cause uncertainty? Does that have a link with delinquent behavior? And I'm going to say, yeah, it does. It definitely does. When the neighborhood breaks down, when society breaks down, when a family breaks down, these are definitely things that can lead to a child being more likely to be delinquent. So this is an interesting study or theory done by Shaw and McKay, the social disorganization theory. And ultimately what they're saying is, I'm going to go to the next slide because I think the picture actually kind of describes it a little bit better. What they're saying is the center of a town, the downtown area, is typically an area that is more socially disorganized, more economically disorganized than the residential areas or the suburbs, as we might call them. So think about people who live in downtown Fresno. There's nothing wrong with living in downtown Fresno. Let me start with that. But people who live in downtown Fresno, what is it about rent or the cost of living in downtown Fresno that is different than living in Northwest Fresno? It's cheaper, right? It's much less expensive. There's a lot more apartments. And ultimately, people who are going through financial troubles, or maybe they're people who are just moved to the United States or just moved to Fresno, they're a lot of times going to be in this area, in these areas. And these areas, because of the newness, the lack of stability, these areas tend to have more crime, whereas these tend to have less crime. Is it fair? No. Is it true? Probably. I don't know if this makes sense, but the zone of transition, ultimately, they're saying, Shaw and McKay would argue that the higher crime rates are going to be in these areas, closer to the city center as opposed to in the outlying areas. Okay. Do we all have different opportunities? Absolutely. We talked about that with the race of life discussion question, which chokes me up every time I watch that. And I'm going to be honest with you, I would have been toward the back. I probably would have been able to take 4 steps when counting that. And I think a lot of people just assume if you look a certain way or you are a certain way now that you've always been like that. You know, we all have different opportunities when we're young. And does the lack of opportunity have an impact on whether someone is going to become a delinquent? Absolutely it could. Now, it's not always going to be, but opportunity in your social structure. If you don't have the opportunity, and I mentioned this on another slide, we were talking about, the fact that for me, in my experience, I had very few people on probation who were playing organized sports. Organized sports are expensive. And if you don't have the opportunity to play them because your parents can't afford them or you can't afford it or whatever, then you are missing out on an opportunity to move forward. If you can't afford to go to a private school, you're missing out on an opportunity. So we also talk about the cultural transmission theory. I remember a case that I had when I first started working as a probation officer in Tulare County, where a mom had been arrested and her mom and dad had been arrested. I had one of the teenage kids on my probation caseload, so I had to find him a place to live because both of his parents had been arrested and he was on probation. So I got an uncle to take him and his younger sibling. The younger sibling was about 5. And they didn't have any clothes. They had nothing. They didn't come with anything. So the uncle said, he took him to Walmart to go buy some clothes. And the 5-year-old had an absolute meltdown because he refused to wear anything but red. Why, you ask? You know why. Because he lived in a family of gang members. And that was normal for them. They didn't know anything different. In his family, the culture was that of gang activity. Now, is there a chance that he could grow up and not be a gang member? Sure. But is there a higher possibility if you grow up in a home with criminals that you are going to probably be a criminal? Yeah, not probably. More likely be criminal. So anyways, these are all different theories. Disorganized neighborhoods, failure of informal social contracts, gang activity, delinquent activity. Okay. Cultural deviance theory. Theory wherein delinquent behavior is viewed as expression of conformity to cultural values and norms that are in opposition of those of the larger U.S. society. This is kind of going back to the person who has a gang member for a relative. A lot of times, this slide is hard for me to explain because I want you to think about 6 things that are important to you. Most of you are going to say things like family, education, hard work, loyalty. Some of you are going to say, your religion, your loved ones, your children, whatever it is. A lot of times, if you go to a prison and you ask the prisoners what is important to them, their answers are probably, not every single one, but they're probably going to be a little bit different. And they're going to be more things like trouble, toughness, smartness, excitement, fate, and autonomy. So autonomy meaning I can take care of myself. Fate, it is what it is. There's nothing I can do to make my life any different. Excitement, there's a lot of people who live their life through, excitement, doing crazy stuff because, they thrive off that. Smartness, we're not talking about a book smartness. We're talking about a person who's street smart. Toughness, nobody wants to be seen as weak. And trouble. So central to this, Miller is the guy that came up with this theory. He believed that people of lower socioeconomic status had their own culture and their own idea of what was important to them. Do you believe lower class youth have different values than middle class youth? I hate this slide. Obviously, I didn't make it. Pearson did. But what is a lower class youth? I don't know. But if you think about, a kid who maybe lives in the hood or who has had a rough upbringing, what's important to him? Is it going to be different than what's important to a kid who was maybe raised in, Clovis? I don't know. I don't know. Strain theories. The strain theories are basically the concept that we all want the same thing. Like, let's say I want a Maserati. I can't afford a Maserati. I work for Fresno City College, okay? But I'm frustrated because I see other people that have Maseratis, and I say, that's bullshit. I should have one too. But I know I can't get one by legal means because I work at Fresno City College, and they don't pay me enough to buy a Maserati, which is fine. I'm not complaining. But anyways, let's say I was like, this is not fair. This is BS. I deserve one too. I'm going to go get a Maserati through illegal means. I'm going to go sell drugs. I'm going to steal, do whatever it is, because I want the same thing other people have, even though I don't have the same means to get them. Makes sense? Strain theory. I'm going to kind of skip through this, blah, 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 skipping through that too. Same kind of deal, blocked opportunity, strain theory, strain theory, strain theory. Status frustration is another part of the whole strain theory. Status frustration. I don't know if I said that right, but anyway, status frustration. Again, you're talking about a person who is frustrated because they can't have, the Yeezys or the Air Jordans, or what are they still called Air Jordans? The Jordans, yeah, whatever. And they're frustrated, so they find other ways to get them. Middle class measuring rod, blah, 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 blah. This is what they believe are the things that are important to the middle class. Gang members turn to delinquency because of a sense of injustice about the lack of legitimate opportunities available to them. Again, we're talking, this is a lot about kind of the strain theory and how people view the fact that they can't afford or can't get something by, like I said, by legal means, so they'll do it by illegal means, sell drugs and do whatever. Okay. This one, out of this, I want to talk a little bit about the drift theory, but I'm looking to see if it's in this chapter. Oh my God, it's a long chapter. Okay, how do we learn criminal behavior? I know, I'm waiting. Hopefully you're thinking about that. How do people learn criminal behavior? They learn it from friends, relatives, media, news, schools, you name it. We learn it a bunch of different ways. Okay, so this is really this whole, it's a long way of saying that. Criminal behavior is learned. It's learned through others in a communication process. Blah, blah, blah. This is kind of one of those, we talked about status offenses and the fact that status offenders are not kept in juvenile hall. This is kind of why we didn't want them to be exposed to actual delinquents. Okay, drift theory. So, imagine, yeah, I'm looking really quick here. Oh my God, it's so long. Okay. The drift theory. So imagine the person who means the most to you in this world, who has always been there for you, who has been your champion, who's been that support system that has kept you going. Now, you're all in college, so I know you had something or someone who believed in you, okay? And for me, I'll tell you that was my mom. My dad left the house when I was young, stopped paying child support, left. I saw him once or twice a year, was completely out of the picture. My mom worked so hard to just to put food on the table for my brother and myself. She didn't date the whole time I was that I lived in her home because she thought it was more important to take care of me. Every last dime she had, she spent trying to make our lives better. She worked so hard all day, every day for my brother and myself. So she's like my hero. So when I'm thinking about, maybe I should commit this crime, my thoughts immediately go to her. And I think, what would this do to my mom? What would happen? How would this devastate her if I got arrested or I did something bad that embarrassed her or that let her down? She has always been like my anchor. I had her as an anchor to keep me from drifting into delinquent behavior. You thought it was a long, stupid story that wasn't going to mean anything, huh? I'm kidding. But anyways, the drift theory. Drift theory, for me, I felt like I had an anchor. I always had that anchor, and there's no way I would have disappointed her. And I know you have someone like that. I would never have disappointed her, so I was not going to drift into delinquent behavior because I knew that I would destroy my mom if I did, and she meant too much to me. She was my anchor. Okay? All right, drift theory. Well, I'll talk about this. Another young lady I had on my caseload, and I like to use her in this, but we're getting too long in this chapter, so because studies show that you guys will turn it off after about 10 minutes, so sorry. Control theories, same kind of deal. A lot of us are controlled. Why would I not kill the neighbor's dog that drives me crazy, barking all the time? Because it would, if I got caught, it would destroy my life, and I would embarrass everybody around me, and I wouldn't do that. I'm held in control, social control. Blah, blah, blah. Skipping. Okay, I am going to go really quick. This young lady, awful story. She was 16 on my caseload. Mom was dead. Dad didn't want her because Dad's wife didn't like her. So her aunt took her in, and aunt completely ignored her, didn't care about her at all, just wanted the paycheck. She wanted to get money at the end of the month to take care of her niece. This girl had no one. No one believed in her. Her bond to society was so weak. And honestly, I really felt like I was her rock. Her probation officer was her rock. That's really, really, really sad. It was a horrible case. This girl she had a big heart, but nobody cared about her. And she went into this kind of delinquent behavior because nobody ever cared about her. And ultimately, she killed herself about a year and a half ago. Really sucks. But anyways, she had really weak bonds to society because she had no one she didn't have that anchor. And that's it. Okay, I went way on over.